The Building Better Relationships Journal and Meditation. We created the Building Better Relationships Journal and Meditation so you can magnetize the better relationships you want and focus on the positive role that you have in creating a better life through your relationships. We are excited for you to discover the gold within you that can help you manifest the love we all crave. The Building Better Relationships Journal has coaching questions that help you listen to the truth of what you want and what helps you to be empowered in love. The Building Better Relationships meditation is designed to strengthen your heart's ability to be that change you wish to see in the world. Why not download it now and think of it as a gift to those you love? If you love journaling and meditation, this is for you. Welcome to Building Better Relationships at Home and at Work with Angela and Patti podcast. This is Patti, a leadership and work-life balance coach from Arizona, USA.
And this is Angela, love and relationship coach from Sydney, Australia. And we are building better relationships with you.
Sharing new perspectives on being heart-centered at home and at work.
So you can draw on your inner power to make your relationships and the world a better place to be around.
Welcome to Building Better Relationships at Home and at Work with Angela and Patti. In this podcast episode, we will have a special guest, Joseph McGuire of Clear Sight Communications.
Joseph McGuire has taught the ancient Chinese skill of face reading and body language since 1985, initially to healthcare professionals as diagnostic and communication tools. He qualified and practiced as a holistic therapist in several modalities for 30 years. More recently, Joseph has added skills from the fields of negotiation, interrogation, and elicitation. His primary focus has been on assisting clients with C-level interviewing, negotiation, executive communication, client profiling, and sales team communication skills.
Joseph has worked with clients in pharma, aviation, TV, financial services, among others. He has now developed the behavioral negotiation program for business leaders. This provides in-depth understanding of their communication patterns and how they are perceived, detailed insight, behavioral patterns of their counterparts, and real-time assistance in the reading room.
He's highly experienced in the role of confidential, impartial, and unbiased observer, and NDAs are a standard part of client relationships. He has 3 adult children and currently lives with his partner in Dublin, Ireland.
Welcome, Joseph. We're so glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation. Absolutely delighted to be here.
Joseph, please tell us and the listeners about you and why you are passionate about what you do.
Well, as you just heard, I am Irish. I live in Dublin, and as a small child, I was reading people. I just intuitively knew stuff about people. I just assumed everybody else was doing it. If it was obvious to me, I figured it must be obvious to everybody else. And it took a while before I realized that was not the case. So people for me are just endlessly fascinating. And the amount of information we convey and we communicate without speaking a single word, without moving a muscle, is, to me, it's just something I'm passionate about, and understanding it and helping. And really what I'm ultimately about is helping people create exceptional relationships, because one of the big challenges we all face is communicating effectively. It's one thing to technically speak the same language as somebody else, but so often we're not actually speaking the same language. What often happens is we speak across people, or we speak at people, rather than speaking to them in the way they process language and the way they absorb information. So what I'm really about, whether it's helping people with their personal or their professional lives, whether it's sales, negotiation, intimate relationships, it's all essentially the same. It's all about helping you understand who it is you're speaking to, beyond the title, beyond the qualifications, beyond the masks we wear as well, and really create a bridge, build a bridge so that you are connecting with the real person and you are being the real you in the process.
That's a really big topic, the real you, and knowing what that is. So can you share, how do we communicate from a place of authenticity and relaxed confidence and clarity? There's a lot there, but maybe you can address them each, or if they're all together as an ensemble.
Yeah, I guess it's a process. It's not something that we necessarily just sort of do off the top of our heads, no pun intended. We need to look inside. We need to take time to look inside, recognize who we actually are, beyond the conditioning that I guess all of us have grown up with, and the conditioning that's been, if you like, imposed upon us through our parents, however well-meaning they may have been, our educational system, etc. And for me, there's an essence within each of us. And it's like, I would describe it as like life wants to speak through us. It's going inside, it's connecting with an inner silence. It's going into, I guess, meditation in whatever form, and connecting with that spark within, that energy within that wishes to express itself. And I'm talking about an energy of kindness. I'm talking about a loving energy, a positive energy. What is it that inspires us, that makes us feel really good, that we sense that life has a magic to it? And when we even begin to connect with that, and we allow ourselves to be in that place, then when we speak from that place, when we present ourselves from that place, when we carry ourselves with that energy, then we're communicating authentically. And it doesn't mean that we're necessarily happy all the time, because for most of us, that would be a fallacy. There are times when we're going to feel a bit low, or we're going to feel upset for whatever reason. But it's to show up in a way that's real, not make excuses, not pretend to be other than we actually are, but to trust that when we really connect with that essence within, that's what is required of us, that's the best we can be, that's the best we can offer at that time. And when we do that, what we typically find is that the people we're meeting actually meet us in that place.
Mm.
And particularly, one thing I have found particularly, and it may sound very, very simple, but particularly when we greet other people with a full, genuine smile, it triggers a response, an internal response in them that allows them to open. It allows them to just kind of relax, even if it's not a visible indicator. It allows them to relax within. They know we're not a threat in any way. And it just gives them an unconscious, silent permission to show up as themselves as well.
Oh, that is really beautiful, Joseph. Thank you for sharing that.
It hasn't always been been the case. I must be honest now. It has been a journey to reach that point myself, and to appreciate that, and I guess particularly to appreciate kindness, and how incredibly powerful and, I guess, invaluable and necessary kindness is, both for ourselves, but also then again in terms of our relationships, personal and professional.
Yeah, I can see that. Being kind is the most important part of any relationship. Having kindness given to you and showing kindness back. What is face reading called Mien Shiang, and sorry if I pronounced it wrong, and how do you use it in your work?
Okay, well, my partner is Chinese, and when I attempt to pronounce it, she kind of looks blankly at me. but it's something like Mien Shiang. And Mien Shiang is it's an ancient Chinese tradition. It's at least 3,000 years old. The documentation goes back that far. It has been used in Chinese business, Chinese medicine, and Chinese politics over that period of time. And the understanding is that our static facial features reveal a huge amount of information about personality, behavior style, communication patterns, parental influences. Like, for example, the right side of the individual face reveals our information about our relationship with our mother and the genetic influence of our mother and her lineage. The left side of the individual face reveals information about the relationship with the father and the genetic influence from his lineage. We also then have the right side of the individual face reveals the public persona. The left side reveals the private persona. So there are many layers, and then each of the individual features has many variations. So depending on the variations, it provides information about specific aspects of the personality. And then particularly when we combine the different features, we form a composite picture of who the person actually is, as opposed to, again, the persona and the mask we so often wear.
And Joseph, how do you use that face reading in your work?
Yeah, there are a number of applications, particularly of more recently. I've used it in a lot of different ways, but more recently, I use it in the negotiation space. I use it to help people. Well, when I'm working with a client in that space, what I do is I profile them first of all, and I help them to recognize exactly how they come across in their interactions. I profile their actual or potential counterparts in a negotiation, so they know, again, exactly who they're going to be meeting and how they're likely to behave, again, beyond the title and credentials, etc. I work with sales organizations to help them read their current or potential customers. And I, not so much of late, but certainly prior to the whole pandemic, I would have done more of this, where I'd be sitting in on interviews for senior level roles. And typically I would be introduced as a colleague or an associate, so the candidates wouldn't know exactly who I am.
Wow. Sneaky face reader in the room. Great strategy. And I wanted to ask you about the smile again and kindness. And I'm thinking about your experience with the Chinese traditions and understanding body language as a evolutionary way that we communicate. Where did the smile become part of our human condition? I know chimpanzees and other apes do it as well, but sometimes their smile is for different purposes. But do you have anything to share about how the smile was brought into our human conditioning as a way to connect or communicate or establish perhaps better relationships?
I don't honestly know where it began. I simply don't know the history, but I know what we refer to as the Duchenne smile, which is the full smile where the eyes are engaged as well. Because you can get a social smile, which is just essentially the mouth, but the eyes are not engaged. But when you have the full Duchenne smile, where the face lights up and the eyes sparkle as well, that relates to the work of I think he was a Belgian neurologist of the late 19th century, and he used electrodes on mental patients, where it's just not exactly the done thing nowadays, but to demonstrate the difference in smiles. And it has been demonstrated in the world of neuroscience that when we give that genuine Duchenne smile, it triggers a mirror neuron response in those we meet. And even if that response is not visible externally, it appears chemically within their body. It triggers a hormonal response in the body so that they feel at ease with us.
I find that fascinating that as a species, we've evolved this communication strategy that triggers a neurobiological effect and a hormonal effect. So what are some strategies to better communicate with understanding?
Well, one of the big things I've learned over the last number of years is listening and using silence, because so often we talk and talk and talk, and a lot of what we say is actually oral white noise. Because again, if we're not paying attention to the person we're speaking to, and when we don't understand how they need to be communicated with, we're really just making noise. One of my favorite sayings is it's attributed to George Bernard Shaw, who was a famous Irish writer of the last century. And the quote is that the greatest illusion about communication is that it has happened. So learning to attune our verbal communication to how the person we're speaking to actually processes and absorbs information is very important. And one of the visual clues there, one of the immediate visual clues there, is their eyebrows. Eyebrows reveal a lot about how people actually process information. So, for example, if the eyebrows are essentially straight across, then these are people who like information presented in a very logical, linear, structured manner. Where if the eyebrows are more curved and more rounded, these are people who are people-centered. They want you to connect with the feeling side of them. They want you to connect with who they are rather than what they think or what their role is. The people who have got naturally very thin eyebrows, like information in small bites. So if somebody's got very thin eyebrows and you just talk and talk and talk at them, they feel overwhelmed. It's just too much information. So they'll shut down. Whereas if you've got somebody with very thick eyebrows, such as mine, and you only give them a snippet of the information, they may feel you're shortchanging them. Are you deliberately leaving something out? And then as I say, there's the listening bit, making sure you actually listen, but not just listen to what they say, listen for how they say it. And are there changes in tone, changes in the rhythm of the speech, which may indicate they're holding something back, or there's something else they want to say that they're not quite ready to reveal.
Very helpful. Thank you for sharing those.
That is very insightful. Please share with us and the listeners about helping clients with personal transformation. So you help people with their personal transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a therapist for like 30 years.
Oh.
And one of the things I learned many, many years ago is that most people, in fact, I would say pretty much everybody, has some issue that they feel insecure about. And the only people who maybe don't have an issue that they feel insecure about are probably psychopaths. So everybody else has some issue. And most people, and this is not something I can validate scientifically, but this is just from my own observation and from discussion with a lot of colleagues, and when I was in that therapy space, is most people actually lack confidence. They can present a front of confidence, but most people have a distinct lack of confidence somewhere. And so what I'm about is helping people recognize their true gifts, their true talents, helping to bring those out. So I will do a profile of a client, for example, and I will help them identify what are the real strengths. I would describe it as like discovering or uncovering their inner diamond. And it's helping them to really connect with that, to recognize it. And they usually recognize it, but they've kind of underplayed it. or undervalued it, or they've been taught to undervalue it in many cases. So it's helping to bring that to the surface. And when that happens, you see the eyes light up, people start to sparkle, and it's like again, there's like a now I can set it free. And what usually follows from that is they report changes in their relationships. Issues that were issues in the relationship are no longer there because they're behaving differently, they're carrying themselves differently. And Angela, you asked a few moments ago about calm confidence. They present themselves, they carry themselves with calm confidence. So a lot of stuff that used to just get under the skin a bit or a lot no longer bothers them. They're not taking things personally. So that's a fairly, it's a general but a typical kind of example of a transformation that I would expect to see.
It's really interesting that without recognizing that inner diamond or that authentic part of the self, you can't really communicate. You can't really connect because you're not recognizing the self. So that's a great realization.
Yeah, there are levels of communication, obviously. And when we recognize, like, it's an extraordinary miracle for any one of us to be here. When you think of the number of ancestors we've got, and how, like, getting into the chemical interchanges that happened between our ancestors for each of us to appear, and all the possibilities that didn't happen. It's quite extraordinary for any one of us to be here. And when we recognize that life is actually something magical and miraculous. And life wants to express itself through us. And when, there's the Marianne Williamson quote that's often attributed to Nelson Mandela about it doesn't, and I forget the exact wording, but it's something along the lines of, I know we're selling ourselves short by playing small. So when we hide who we are, and again, there's all sorts of conditioning behind it. When we hide who we are, we're not allowing that miracle, we're not allowing the magic to really express itself. But when we recognize it and accept it with gratitude, and we allow it to emerge, we allow it to express, that transforms our communication, it transforms our relationship, and we become so much more relaxed.
Mm.
And when we truly relax, people just gravitate towards us.
It's very insightful to understand or reflect that there's layers of communication. And so what you're sharing about that really profound miracle of being able to share the miracle of being here with someone, that's this sort of most highest form of communication, or the best part of being here on earth. But there are other layers of communication, and I think that's where some people get a bit disappointed or confused. So I'm wondering how face reading might help with better connection in relationships between people.
Yeah, that's something that came up a lot for me. In Ireland, we had the longest lockdown in Europe, and I wasn't looking for this particular kind of work, but a lot of people who were in relationships realized that they were having to spend a lot more time in close proximity to people they thought they knew and loved than they were accustomed to, and realized they had issues. So what I typically would do there, I would arrange a Zoom call or a Skype call. I would have them send me photos of the person or the people they were having the challenges with. And then I would bring those photos up on a screen and talk about the I made it very clear I was not a relationship counselor. I made that very, very clear, but I could help with the behavior patterns and the communication styles. So I would talk about the challenges they faced and by having different communication styles, particularly under stress. And the stress levels were obviously really escalated by suddenly being in lockdown and being very confined. So I would talk about the stress patterns, the if you like, the default stress patterns, and then I would talk about the natural communication styles of each of them. And obviously, if it was for the person who was there for the session, I would talk about, look, you're the one who's here, you're the one who has to adapt. You can explain this to your partner or to your housemate or whatever, but since you're the one who's here, you're the one who has to adapt your behavior. And you have to recognize this is their default setting. So if you want a constructive relationship with them, this is how you need to go about it. And again, it's just going through static facial features and recognizing, you know, for example, like I mentioned about the eyebrows there, and then you can talk about things like if somebody has very thin lips, they're going to be head over heart, where if somebody has more naturally full lips, they're going to be more emotionally expressive. If somebody has like naturally narrowed eyes, they're going to be more emotionally withdrawn. Where if somebody has big open eyes, they're going to be more hand on heart, you know, the heart on sleeve. So there are a lot of very obvious visual clues and cues there, which you can use to help people recognize, okay, this is your natural way of being, and this is their natural way of being. And to bridge the gap, this is how you need to adapt. And it's recognizing the importance of adaptability.
So with that, Joseph, could you give like a quick little face reading of Angela? Just a quick one.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, the first thing you notice, the first thing I'll start with is Angela's eyebrows. And you notice at the beginning of the eyebrow here, it's much thicker and it's very tidy. So that tells me about Angela is before Angela starts anything, she needs to be very organized. So being organized and fully prepared is very, very important. So if you want Angela to do something for you, give it to her in a tidy bundle. Don't present her with chaos, because that just doesn't suit her at all. So that's the first thing. And if you want to communicate with Angela, communicate with clarity. Don't jump from topic to topic to topic. Again, that will just drive her demented. So you'll lose her attention very, very quickly. So there's a couple of things from eyebrows. You'll notice her nose is well formed. So that tells me that she's actually a very strong character. And I don't say nice things for the sake of it, by the way, but it tells me that she's a naturally strong character. She's well able to stand up for herself, well able to express herself. And she has a lovely, lovely wide curved mouth here. So Angela is naturally very sociable, she's very articulate. She's well able to speak, and she's naturally a good speaker. So you are well able to communicate verbally with people, and it's very natural to you to speak. So if you, for example, if you were in a situation where you weren't allowed to speak, or speak where your speech was repressed, that would be hugely stressful for you.
That makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So how's that?
Very good. Thank you very much.
And can you do a quick one of Patti?
Okay. Very determined lady. Very determined lady. Lovely, lovely firm chin here. So when you want something, you're going to go for it. And please don't get in Patty's way when she's going for something. It's not a good idea. Again, well able to express yourself, and you've got a different mouth shape. So you have a very, I would describe a very sensual mouth shape, and that when we use the word sensual, we typically associate that with the physical side of life. But I don't just mean it there. I mean, if I were to meet Patti, for Patti to really enjoy the meeting and to relax, the ambience is important. The environment is important. So if you want to have a business meeting with Patti, choose a really elegant place rather than just a little coffee shop on the corner. It's not that she can't enjoy the little coffee shop, but she'll feel so much more at ease if the atmosphere, the environment, the ambience is really elegant and it's really tasteful. Does that make sense to you?
Somewhat, yes. Being ambitious and things like that in the past, I have been very ambitious. I do like a coffee shop though, but when you said environment, I'm one that doesn't like big crowds. So that is definitely where you hit it on the nail, is that I don't like to be in places that it's very, very crowded.
Yeah, because crowded means, sorry, I did cut across you there, Patti. Crowded means noisy, and noisy isn't elegant.
Yes.
So the ambience, not just the physical environment, but the ambience. If it's a place where, again, it's got that lovely calm feeling, that's also part of the elegance that would appeal to you.
Yes, definitely. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Joseph, for reading us. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Joseph.
Please tell us a little bit about your book and share with the listeners why they would enjoy reading your book.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, well, I don't know if you can see it there. That's sorry, I'm not.
That's okay.
It's called Face Facts. There we go. Yeah, Face Facts. It's a very, as you can see, it's a very slim book, and that's deliberately so. It's called Face Facts: The Art of Reading Your Clients and Prospects for Sales, Recruitment, and Negotiation. I was aiming it particularly at a business audience, but it is really for anybody. And it's a very visual book. Like there's lots of pictures right through it. And it's deliberately a short information primer for people who want to learn about reading faces. It goes through like the 8 basic face shapes recognized in the Chinese system, then like 6 forehead shapes, 6 eyebrows sort of thing. And it gives an illustration of each of them and what each variation means in terms of the personality. So it's designed to be very practical, usable, and accessible for people. And again, it's about helping people to recognize who it is they're actually engaging with so that they can communicate effectively and create, ideally, exceptional relationships.
It sounds like that's a book to get. Where could people get your book?
Okay, if people want the hard copy, you get a signed hard copy directly from my website, which is clearsightcommunications.com, or you can get it on Kindle, on Amazon on Kindle.
Thank you. Are there different communication styles? And what are they, and how do you teach people about these?
Yeah, there are many variations in communication style. I know in NLP, for example, neuro-linguistic programming, they talk about auditory, kinesthetic, and clairvoyant, which is basically or visual, auditory, kinesthetic. So basically, I don't go so much into those, but what I do talk about again is the like the static facial features and what they indicate in terms of people's communication styles. So like I talked about the eyebrows there, for example, and then if somebody, for example, if somebody has a very vertical forehead which goes straight up, then again they're much more logical and linear in their thinking. Whereas if the forehead is more curved like mine, they're more creative in their thinking. So they don't want to be nailed down to this is the system and this is the way we do it because this is the way we've always done it. So if somebody has a more curved forehead like that, they need to be allowed creative expression. If you've got more, come back to eyebrows, if you've got more sort of angled eyebrows, angled down like this, or like an inverted V shape, they're more autocratic type personalities. They will bark out the orders. They expect to be obeyed. So there are multiple variations. And the thing is, and again, going back to the very beginning, it's about recognizing the communication style of the individual you're speaking to now, and attuning, adapting your communication so that you create a bridge rather than talking at them.
And so, Joseph, can you share with younger people what might have changed with communication? Maybe some things have stayed the same. And what do you see as changing with the next generations communicating online and in person?
One of the big issues, and this comes up time and time again, is this subject. And that has severely inhibited communication for a lot of youngsters growing up nowadays. I tell a story sometimes. A friend of mine a few years back, her son was 17 and he was invited to a party, birthday party, one of his friends. She drove him there and then she collected him afterwards. And when he got into the car, he was quite subdued. So she asked him, "What's wrong? Was it not a good party?" And he said, "No, it was terrible." She said, "What happened?" And he said his friend's mother made them all leave their phones in a bowl on the table when they went inside the door, and they had to sit inside the room, or they had to go into the room and they had to talk to each other, and they didn't know how. And so many young folk now have grown up with texting and emojis. And for some people, it's actually considered rude to make a phone call.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I was shocked when I heard that. And I've actually heard adults say that as well. But for some people now, it's actually rude to call somebody. And many people don't even like leaving voicemails. But when we don't hear the tone of voice, even, or don't speak directly to somebody, we're missing out on so much, because it's so easy to misinterpret the tone of a text. And many people just use what's it called? What's it called? Text language, where you're just abbreviating the words all the time. So that makes the words even shorter. And it's really inhibiting it's really inhibiting communication, because so many people have are losing the social skills as well as their verbal skills. So I would be quite concerned about what is coming, as well as what's actually happening now.
Well, I have grandchildren and I do talk with them. We do sit down and talk. So, but they're young, but I hope that continues.
Yeah, vitally important.
Yeah.
Vitally important.
So, Joseph, how can our listeners find you or contact you about your services, your book, your courses, your theme presentations, and your YouTube channel?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is a little behind the times, so I need to pay attention to that. But the quickest way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I'm much more active there than anywhere else. I do have a Facebook page, but LinkedIn is the best way by some distance to communicate with me. My website is clearsightcommunications.com, but LinkedIn is by far the best way to reach me.
That's your favorite platform where you're
Yes,
at?
definitely, yeah.
Great. And Joseph, is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
Just going back to something I said earlier, recognize the value of a smile. Smiling is such a powerful tool for communication, but make sure you smile with your eyes as well. And remember also, silence is a very important part of communication as well, not to overspeak. So many people have a habit of speaking because of insecurity. But when you can sit in silence with somebody, peaceful silence with somebody, that's quite profound as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Please share this podcast with others, and you can find out about Joseph's services and products from our show notes. We'll have Joseph's contact information in the show notes.
Thank you for listening to Building Better Relationships with Angela and Patti. Send us a message and please like or share the podcast or donate with the Anchor donate button. We really value your feedback.